Welcome to another week of Barstool Perspective, where typically we give you a rundown of the week's news in booze. Brett is not here this week. I usually make something up about where he is, but the truth is he is in Washington, D.C. lobbying. So that's weirder than anything I would make up, so I'm just going to give you the truth. My co-host here is usually Brad or Lindsay. My co-host today is running a little bit late, but the good news is that co-host is Cory Booker, Senator from New Jersey, and this show will end roughly this time tomorrow. Now, what you probably did not know about the month of April is that the Foundation for Advancing Alcohol Responsibility, my good friends over there, they want you to know that April is Alcohol Responsibility Month. They're going at this hard. They have strategically partnered with some of my favorite people on the planet, social media influencers. And they're doing that to promote their Responsibility Looks Great on You ad campaign. Now, my advice is Narragansett. It's not as good as better beers, but you can drink it all day and not get drunk. And that's what I recommend you do for Alcohol Responsibility Month. More importantly than Alcohol Responsibility Month is what has happened this week. Wednesday was Liberation Day. And so this whole week, we're feeling the fantasticness of it, the greatness of it has been happening since Wednesday. We have all been liberated. If you have been thinking, man, I hate having to pay $13 for a six-pack of decent beer, you have been liberated from that. That six-pack is now going to cost at least $15 and you're free. Thank you. You're welcome. Now, we are talking about tariffs, and, I would really love to be talking about something else. But tariffs this week, as with every aspect of the economy, but alcohol in particular, talking about tariffs is unavoidable. Talking about anything else is sort of that whole old expression, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? I mean, tariffs are really where it all is. So tariffs on the European Union are 20%. When it comes to alcohol, that is a hell of a lot better than the 200% that Trump was promising. But 20% is still going to hurt. The EU Commissioner Chief, Ursula von der Leyen, I'm sure that I'm mispronouncing that, and I don't know what the hell the EU Commissioner Chief does, and I'm not going to pretend that I do. But she apparently is somebody that says smart things about the European economy. She calls this a major blow to the world economy. To be clear-eyed, this is going to hurt everybody from day one. But she also says that Europe is in it together. So what the United States is doing to the EU, all the EU countries, it is going to be very damaging to the EU countries for the reason that imports are going to diminish. They're just not going to be price competitive, a lot of things here in the U.S. So it's going to hurt the EU, even though we Americans are the ones that ultimately pay these taxes. But they are kind of leaning into this whole idea that we, as the EU, we're in it together, we're going to get through it together, we're going to figure out alternative markets, and we will deal with it collectively as a group of allied nations. And that is probably going to mostly be true, but there are some exceptions to that. The UK, of course, pulled out of the EU with Brexit, and as a result of that, the UK has not been slapped with the 20% tariff that's hit the rest of Europe. The UK itself only has a 10% tariff. Now, what that means is that it pays half the tariff rate of the rest of Europe, or it's hit with it doesn't pay it, we pay it. It's hit with half the tariff rate of the rest of Europe. So when you look at like Ireland specifically, what that's going to mean is that a product like Bushmills that comes from the cuckold part of Ireland, the non-Ireland North part, it's going to be subject to half of the tariff rate of anything in actual real Ireland. So Jameson is going to be subjected to double the tariff rate of Bushmills, for example. Now, what this means to wine, there is currently an expected drop of about 20% of sales of French wine in the United States in the year ahead. I suspect it's probably going to be higher than that, but that's just my supposition. If you have purchased $5 million worth of European wine, and I don't mean you individually, I mean if you're an importer that has acquired $5 million worth of wine, you are now going to be slapped with a $1 million tax on that $5 million worth of wine. Now, if you are solvent enough and liquid enough to pay that $1 million tax, which you're not billed, you got to pay it to get your $5 million wine out of the port. So if you're liquid enough, you pay it and you pass that cost on to the consumer with higher prices in wine. If you're not liquid enough to have $1 million laying around, then that wine's going to sit there. You can't get it out of the port. So the wine's going to go bad. You as an importer are probably going to go bankrupt. People are going to lose their jobs. That wine is going to sit there and spoil. A winery's probably getting screwed. A shipper is getting screwed. And who wins? Absolutely nobody. Now, this has trickle-down effects. For every dollar spent importing European wines, we generate $4.52 in the American economy as a result of shipping and wholesalers and retail sales. So every dollar spent importing wine produces $4.52. So every dollar that's taken out of imports is going to take that $4.52 out of the chain. Now, the idea of these is the idea of a tariff in general, if it's done wisely and strategically, is that it helps promote American businesses. So you can theorize here that a decrease in wine imports is going to lead to an increase of American wine production and wine sales. But people in the wine industry are not bullish on that, and they're saying that it's going to be bad for everything across the board. For one thing, you can't make Chianti or Bordeaux or real champagne here in the United States. You know, we don't grow the grapes. We don't have the same terroir as those areas where those grapes are grown. So you just can't, replace Chianti with California Cab and have them be comparable wines. They're not going to pair the same, etc. But beyond that, you have the fact that American wineries get most of their bottles from Europe. Italy is a big producer, Mexico as well. So they're going to be paying higher prices for the bottles themselves. I don't know where the hell cork comes from, but cork, etc., everything that's related to making wine, prices of that are going to increase. Beer is definitely screwed. There is a 25% tariff on beer, specifically imported beers. But in addition to that, so once again, that should mean theoretically a boost to American beer production. Maybe it will in certain segments. Maybe something will take over more of the market that has been eaten up by Modelo and Corona. But there is also, in addition to the 25% tariff on imported beer, there's a 25% tariff on beer cans. So if you are a United States beer producer, you're going to be paying that 25% tariff on the cans, which is going to increase the price of domestically produced canned beer. We also import our bottles. We don't make aluminum cans here domestically, so that is just going to hurt. Even Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul this week came out in opposition to tariffs. I guess they got off their knees there at Mar-a-Lago for 10 minutes to point out the fact that these tariffs are particularly decimating the Kentucky economy. There's a little piece of irony. The two last things I'm going to tell you about tariffs, and then I'm going to move on to things that depress me less. The United States-Mexico-Canada Act. That was passed during the first Trump administration to replace NAFTA. But it did a lot of the same things that NAFTA did. And one of those things is to lock in a 0% tariff on certain approved items that are manufactured in Canada or Mexico. So what that appears to mean right now is that these tariffs that Trump has passed unilaterally, and by the way, if you're curious, the only way that Trump can pass all of these tariffs unilaterally is that he has invoked emergency powers for a non-existent emergency. And Congress could put an end to that anytime it wanted. That was actually Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul were among senators that voted to revoke the non-existent emergency so that Congress could take control back over tariffs. But they're going to lose that fight in the House. But these tariffs, they are being done at a purely executive level. But this legislation that replaced NAFTA, it's federal legislation. So it appears that tequila manufactured in Mexico and liquor manufactured in Canada is not going to be subject to the tariffs. So while these tariffs are decimating a lot of the American liquor producers, particularly Kentucky bourbons, they're actually advantageous to Canadian Club, for example, or Jose Cuervo. They're going to pay 0% tariffs. This might explain why Diageo, that has been hurting for a lot of non-tariff related reasons. We talked a few weeks ago about how Warren Buffett just picked up a bunch of, no, that was Constellation Brands, I guess. But Diageo only fell 2% over the past couple of days, as opposed to the much larger drop of the market in general. And that could be because Diageo actually has a little bit of a tactical advantage as being one of the few companies and producers in the world that is not going to be subjected to any tariffs, at least in the foreseeable future, for stuff that they manufacture, for liquor that they manufacture in Mexico. And Tilray, yesterday, by the way, we talked about Tilray a lot. This may also help explain why Tilray did in fact drop yesterday, but it only dropped by 0.0002%. So yesterday, that is damn near like making money. All the rest of the news is really bad news. I'm telling you people that I worked really hard to find good news today. And it just ain't out there. But tequila, tariffs aside, industry leaders are expecting tequila sales to drop, in part because tequila has just been kind of riding a fad. It's also been picking up business from a lot of the celebrity tequila brands. And in addition to that, it has benefited from really cheap agave. Agave was overplanted for a few years. There was a shortage of it, and Mexican farmers responded to that by planting a boatload of it, and that made agave prices plummet. The result has been cheaper tequila, but the result has also been Mexican farmers have gotten screwed, and they're not going to continue to grow agave. So agave prices are expected to increase. Also, the tequila fad in general is expected to decrease just because it's what happens to fads. So tequila has been the one kind of bright, shining economic spot in the liquor business the past couple of years, and it may be taking a downturn. You know, one of the things about having a co-host is that I get to spend at least half of the time doing this show drinking. And it's a lot harder to do when I'm sitting here by myself. So give me a second to take some sips. Moderation. DTC is the abbreviation for direct to consumer. And the Hawaii legislature just shot down a DTC bill that would have allowed Hawaiians to order alcohol directly. They did it with the rationale that DTC sales allow minors to buy alcohol under, without IDs being checked, and that's going to increase alcohol consumption by minors, and they extrapolate that out to theorize that it's going to increase drunk driving by minors. Now, all of this appears to be a lot of speculation and extrapolation to me. They have done compliance audits in states and have found what is said to be significant numbers of minors purchasing alcohol through direct-to-consumer sales. However, the source article for this information that talks about how heroic and smart the Hawaiian legislature were, like Colorado and multiple other states that have shot down direct-to-consumer sales. The source article for this is a publication by the Wine and Spirits Wholesalers of America. So, distributors. What I really take away from this story is not that DTC sales are bad, because they're really not. They're very advantageous to a lot of these small distilleries and small wineries, particularly with the ability to ship to people in these control states like Ohio. Control state means that the state itself gets to decide what liquors are sold in liquor stores in Ohio. And that shuts out a lot of these smaller distilleries, these small producers. So these DTC laws allow a market and a way to build a following in a market in states that they can't break into because of the control system. The real opposition to this isn't coming from data or common sense. The real opposition to it is coming from these wholesalers, the distributors, who get their piece of the pie in this really crooked, illogical system. So I think that's the real takeaway of that story, is that the distributors, wholesalers of America are successfully lobbying people, probably far more successfully than Brett. They are lobbying Congress to kill these DTC bills. Hooters, you love it, I love it. It might be going away one way or the other. I actually don't love Hooters. I always kind of hated Hooters, and I considered it like a strip joint for guys who were too whipped to go to a strip joint. But Hooters has that reputation, and it really hasn't helped it. It has been struggling. They blame the pandemic, and they blame, decreasing sales in that sort of mid-range restaurant market. But I'm not really sure that the whole misogyny theme has been helping them a lot. They are currently $350 million in debt. And there is a plan now. They're $350 million in debt, despite the fact that they apparently changed the uniforms there. It's been a very long time since I've been to a Hooters, but I am told that the uniforms look more like lingerie now than the really skimpy basketball shorts that they used to be. So they made the required uniforms a little bit smuttier, and they also added a bikini night, which I think is a really classy move on their part. None of this has helped. It has actually caused their sales to continue to tank. They are $350 million in debt, and they are headed into bankruptcy. There is a plan to save Hooters in one fashion. The original owners of Hooters, the founders of Hooters, who are, wait for it, shockingly, from Florida. These guys want to take the chain back over and their term do a re-Hootersization of the brand. To them, what that means is moving away from the sexism that made the brand what it was and making it a more family-friendly establishment. So, will that work? It just sounds to me like shitty breaded chicken wings in a less interesting space. But good luck with that, Hooters. Do you people have any questions? Send them to Dan. I have I really did scour the news this week for positive stories. I mean, there is a lot more news out there, but I can summarize all of it for you as everything sucks. Everything is down. There is no silver lining. Slit your fucking wrist. So I'm not going to go through most of that stuff. I want to leave you with the closest thing that I could find all week to a feel-good story. And this comes out of St. Paul. In St. Paul, some scumbag tried to rob Big Discount Liquors. And the guy walks up to the counter. He puts down a bottle of liquor. He shows a gun. Looks like it's a .45. It actually turns out to be a BB gun, but a BB gun that looks remarkably like an actual .45. So he puts the gun on the counter, and he tells the owner, who's working behind the register, to give him all his cash. The owner says, okay, I'll give you everything that's in the register, but please stay where you are. Don't be a dick. Don't make any aggressive moves, because my daughter is here with me at work, and I don't want you to scare her. I don't want her to be afraid. Well, this guy, being the complete asshole that he is, he doesn't stand there and wait to be handed all this guy's money. He walks around to grab money out of the register himself. A whole fight ensues. He assaults the owner, and rather than being freaked out and scared, the owner's 8-year-old daughter grabs an aluminum baseball bat and she starts bashing this fucker in the head. And so he is now doing 3 years in prison in Minnesota. And that is the closest thing that I have to a feel-good story this week. Dan, do we have any questions out there from the peanut gallery?
Nope.
Well, I guess I answered all of them then. Enjoy.